The morning after my husband's funeral, my son placed a single $100 bill on the kitchen table and pushed it toward me. "Here, Mom," he said casually. "This should be enough for the month." For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard him. The house was still quiet from the funeral the day before. Flowers sat on every flat surface. Sympathy cards were stacked near the microwave. My husband's coat still hung by the door where he'd left it the last time he came home from the hospital. 46 years of marriage, and suddenly the house felt like a stranger's place. I stared at the crisp bill lying between us. $100? I asked quietly. My son shrugged, already scrolling through his phone like the conversation bored him. "You don't really need much, Mom. The house is paid off, utilities are covered, food's already here. That should be more than enough for your personal stuff." Behind him, his wife, my daughter-in-law, leaned against the counter sipping coffee. She didn't say a word, but I noticed the quick glance they exchanged. The kind of glance people share when they think the third person in the room won't notice. But when you've been a mother for decades, you notice everything. I picked up the $100 slowly, turning it between my fingers. "Your father used to give me money for groceries every week," I said carefully, "and I handled most of the bills." "That was different," my son replied quickly. "How?" He sighed, like I was making things complicated. "Dad managed the finances, Mom. Now that he's gone, it's easier if I handle everything." Everything. The words sat in the air like a locked door. His wife finally spoke. "We just want to make things simpler for you," she said sweetly. "You shouldn't have to worry about money at your age." At my age. I folded the bill and slipped it into my sweater pocket. "I see," I said. The conversation ended there, or at least they thought it did. The first thing I learned about surviving on $100 a month is that humiliation costs nothing, but it arrives daily. That first week, I opened the refrigerator to make myself lunch and noticed something strange. The shelves were full steaks, salmon, organic fruit, fancy yogurt cups that probably cost more than my entire weekly grocery budget used to be. But when dinner came, my daughter-in-law plated meals only for herself and my son. "Mom, there's soup in the pantry if you're hungry," she called from the dining room. Soup, the kind that comes in a can for 99 cents. I stood in the kitchen holding the can, listening to them laugh over their wine glasses at the table. My husband built this house with his own hands, and suddenly I felt like a guest in it. By the second week, I started paying attention, not to what they said, but to what they did. My son left for work every morning at 8. His wife worked remotely from the office upstairs, tapping on her laptop while expensive grocery deliveries arrived almost daily. One afternoon, I watched through the window as she carried in 2 large shopping bags. Inside were designer shoes, 2 pairs. Later that evening, I heard my son laughing in the living room. "Seriously? $800 for shoes?" "They were on sale," she replied. Sale. I quietly touched the $100 bill still folded in my wallet. But the most interesting thing happened at the end of the month. My son sat me down at the kitchen table again, just like before. He placed another $100 bill in front of me. "There you go, Mom," he said, "same as last month." I looked at him for a long moment. "Tell me something," I said gently. "Sure. Did your father leave anything for me?" The question made him pause. Just for a second. Then he smiled. "Of course not, Mom. Dad didn't really have much saved. Remember all those medical bills? My husband had been sick for months. Hospitals, treatments, insurance paperwork. It was possible. But something about my son's answer felt too quick, too smooth. I nodded slowly and picked up the money. "Thank you," I said. That night, after everyone went to bed, I walked quietly into the hallway. My husband used to keep important documents in a small cabinet inside his office. I hadn't opened it since the day he died. The house creaked softly as I stepped inside the room. His chair was still pushed slightly away from the desk, exactly where he left it. I sat down slowly and opened the cabinet drawer, folders, tax papers, insurance forms. And then I saw it. A thick envelope with my name written across the front, in my husband's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, and beneath it a document that made my heart stop. Because if what I was looking at was real, my son had just told me the biggest lie of his life. I sat in my husband's chair, holding the envelope with my name on it. For a long moment, I couldn't bring myself to open the letter. His handwriting alone almost broke me. Thomas had always written my name the same way, large looping letters, like he was proud of it. Margaret. Finally, I unfolded the paper. The letter was short, but every word felt heavy. My Maggie, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the extra time I hoped for. I know our son will try to take over things after I'm gone. Let him think he has control for now. But remember what I told you last winter. The house, the account, and the final document are protected. Everything belongs to you. Trust Mr. Hargrove if you need help. I've already spoken to him. And Maggie, don't let anyone make you feel small in the home we built together. I love you. Always. Tom, my hands trembled as I lowered the letter. Everything belongs to you. Slowly, I looked at the document beneath it. It was a legal paper, stamped, signed, and very official looking. At the top were words that made my stomach tighten. Property deed, primary ownership transfer, and beneath it, my name. Only my name. The house, the very house I was sitting in, was legally transferred to me 6 months before my husband died. My son's name wasn't anywhere on the page. Not once. For a long time, I simply sat there in silence. Because suddenly a lot of things made sense. My son's quick answer earlier, his confidence when he said there was nothing left, and the strange way he and his wife had started behaving in the house. They thought they owned it, but they didn't, not even a little. I folded the letter carefully and slipped everything back into the envelope. Then I placed it exactly where I found it. Because sometimes the most powerful move is pretending you know nothing. The next morning, I accepted my $100 again. Just like before. Thanks, sweetheart, I told my son gently. He barely looked up from his phone. You're welcome, Mom. His wife smiled politely from the kitchen island, that same tight little smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. But now when I looked at them, I saw something different. Not power, just arrogance. And arrogance has a funny way of collapsing when it finally hits reality. Living on $100 a month became my quiet little experiment. I walked to the grocery store instead of driving. I bought rice, beans, eggs, and the cheapest bread on the shelf. I learned which days the bakery discounted day-old loaves. I discovered the library had free coffee on Tuesday mornings. And the funny thing was, the less money I spent, the more invisible I became inside my own house. They stopped paying attention to me completely, which turned out to be very useful, because invisible people hear everything. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the hallway when I heard my daughter-in-law talking upstairs. She was on the phone. I'm telling you, she said. Once the house is fully in our name, we're selling it. My hands froze. Selling it. I stayed perfectly still. The market is insane right now, she continued. We could easily get $800,000 for it. $800,000. My husband built this house for $90,000 in 1989. And the mom? The person on the phone must have asked. My daughter-in-law laughed. Oh, please. She barely leaves the house. We'll move her into some senior apartment or something. Senior apartment. I slowly finished folding the towel in my hands. Downstairs, the grandfather clock ticked loudly in the living room. Tick, tick, tick. Time has a strange way of revealing people's real intentions. At the end of the 3rd month, my son handed me the money again. Another $100. But this time he added something new. You know, Mom, he said casually, we've been thinking about the future. Oh? I replied. He nodded. This house is honestly too big for you. Too big. For the woman who had lived there for 32 years. His wife joined the conversation quickly. We just want what's best for everyone, she said. Maintenance on a place like this is expensive. I smiled softly. You're probably right. They looked relieved, like the conversation had gone exactly the way they expected. But inside my pocket, my fingers touched the small card I had picked up earlier that day. A business card. Hargrove and Bennett, estate attorney, my husband's lawyer, the one mentioned in the letter. Because the truth was, while my son believed he was slowly pushing me out of my own home, I had already scheduled a meeting for Thursday morning, and by the time that meeting was over, my son and his wife were going to learn something very interesting about the house they were planning to sell, something that would change their lives overnight. Thursday morning arrived quietly, just like every other morning in the house. My son left for work at 8, kissing his wife on the cheek as he grabbed his car keys. "Don't forget," he said to her, "we should start looking at listings this weekend. If we're selling the place, we need to move fast." She nodded. "I've already been browsing." I stood at the kitchen sink rinsing a coffee mug, pretending not to hear. But inside, something almost felt calm, because they were finally saying everything out loud. Once the front door closed behind him, I put on my coat. "Going somewhere?" my daughter-in-law asked from the living room. "Just a walk," I said. Technically, that wasn't a lie. The office of Hargrove and Bennett was only 6 blocks away. The building looked old but well cared for, dark brick, tall windows, polished brass door handles. Inside, the receptionist smiled warmly. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Mr. Hargrove," I said. Her eyes flicked to the computer. "Margaret Walker?" "Yes." "Of course. He's expecting you." That sentence alone made my heart beat a little faster. Expecting me, meaning my husband really had planned this. A moment later, a tall, gray-haired man stepped out of an office. "Mrs. Walker," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel Hargrove. Your husband spoke about you often." I shook his hand. "Please," he said gently. "Come in." His office smelled faintly of leather and old books. When we sat down, he studied my face for a moment. "I assume you found the letter." I nodded. "And the deed?" Another nod. He leaned back slightly. "Then you already know the most important fact," he said. "The house belongs entirely to you." Hearing someone say it out loud felt different, real. "But that's not the only thing your husband arranged," he continued. My stomach tightened. "There's more." Mr. Hargrove opened a file folder on his desk. "Your husband came to see me about 8 months ago," he said. "He was very concerned about what might happen if he passed away suddenly." That sounded exactly like Thomas, always planning ahead. "He transferred the property fully into your name," the lawyer continued, "but he also added a legal protection clause." "Protection from what?" Mr. Hargrove slid a document across the desk. "From being pressured, manipulated, or removed from the home." I looked down at the paper. The language was complicated, but the meaning slowly became clear. "If anyone attempts to force you out of the home," Mr. Hargrove explained, "you have the legal right to remove them instead." I blinked. "Remove them?" "Yes." My heart started beating a little faster. "Your husband was very specific about this," the lawyer added. "He said he wanted you to have absolute control over your living situation." I thought about my son's casual voice. "This house is too big for you, Mom." "Mr. Hargrove," I said slowly, "what if the people living with me believe the house belongs to them?" The lawyer gave a small, knowing smile. "That happens more often than you'd think. And if they were planning to sell it?" That smile grew slightly wider. "Well," he said, "that would be quite a surprise for them." When I left the office an hour later, the air felt different. Or maybe it was just me. For 3 months, I had felt like a guest in my own life. But suddenly, I remembered something important. This had always been my home. My husband had made sure of it. That evening, dinner was steak. The smell filled the kitchen as my daughter-in-law cooked. 2 plates sat on the table, not 3. I opened a can of soup quietly. "Mom," my son said casually, "we were actually talking about something today." "Oh?" "Yeah, we think it might be time to start preparing the house for sale." I stirred my soup slowly. "That sounds like a big step." "It's the smart move," he replied. "The market is perfect right now." His wife nodded eagerly. "And we found a great condo downtown." I looked up at them. "And where would I live?" They exchanged a quick glance. My son cleared his throat. "Well, we were thinking maybe a senior community, somewhere comfortable." "Comfortable. Like a piece of furniture being relocated." I took a slow sip of soup. "That's very thoughtful," I said. Relief spread across their faces instantly. They thought I had agreed. What they didn't know was that earlier that afternoon, Mr. Hargrove had already begun preparing a very different set of papers. Papers that would arrive within the next week. Official ones. The kind that change people's living situations overnight. Because while my son believed he was slowly arranging my future, I had just quietly arranged his. And the best part? They still thought they were in control. The papers arrived the following Tuesday. a thick white envelope delivered by certified mail. My son was the one who picked it up from the mailbox. I was sitting in the living room when he walked in, flipping the envelope over with mild curiosity. "Looks official," he said. His wife glanced over from the couch. "Probably insurance junk." He shrugged and tore it open. The moment he unfolded the first page, his expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. "What is it?" his wife asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he started reading more carefully. Then he read the second page, then the third. "Daniel?" she asked again. Slowly, my son looked up. "Mom?" he said. "Yes? What is this?" I folded my hands calmly in my lap. "What does it say?" His wife stood up and walked over, snatching the papers from his hand. She read the first paragraph out loud. "Formal notice, property ownership verification." Her voice trailed off. Then she flipped to the next page, and the next. Her face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. "I believe those are legal documents." My son looked stunned. It says you're the sole owner of the house." I nodded once. "That's correct." Silence fell over the room. A very long silence. "But," he stammered, "that can't be right." "It is," I said calmly. He flipped through the papers again, faster this time. "But Dad never told me this." "No," I replied softly. "He told me." His wife stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "You knew?" "For a while now." The room felt very small suddenly. My son rubbed the back of his neck, confused. "Okay, well, that's fine," he said quickly. "We're family. It's still basically our house." I didn't respond. Instead, I waited. Because I knew he hadn't reached the final page yet. And sure enough, a moment later he did. His eyes widened. "What is this part?" he asked slowly. "That," I said, "is the clause my husband added." My daughter-in-law leaned closer to read over his shoulder. Her lips moved silently across the page. Then suddenly, "You can't be serious," she snapped. "Oh, I'm very serious." My son looked up again. "It says, if the homeowner feels pressured or manipulated to leave the property, the homeowner has the right to remove any residents immediately." "Yes." The word hung gently in the air. His face went pale. "You're not saying I am?" The clock in the hallway ticked loudly. Tick, tick. "You've been very generous these past few months," I continued calmly, "giving me $100 a month to live on in my own home." My daughter-in-law opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "So I spent that time thinking," I said. "Thinking about what?" "About respect." My son's voice grew tense. "Mom, we never disrespected you." I raised an eyebrow. "You fed me canned soup while eating steak 3 feet away." Neither of them spoke. "You planned to sell the house I built with your father." Silence again. "And you were discussing where to relocate me like I was an old chair." My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. "Well, the house is too big for you." I smiled gently. "You're right." She blinked. "I agree." For a brief moment, hope flashed across their faces. Then I continued. "That's why I've decided to downsize." My son nodded quickly. "Okay, good. And that process begins tomorrow morning." He stalked. "What happens tomorrow?" I leaned back in the chair. "The moving company arrives." His wife frowned. "To move what?" "You." The word landed like a dropped plate. "You can't be serious," she said. "Oh, I am." My son stood up. "Mom, you can't just kick us out." "I can," I said quietly. "And legally, I already have." I slid a second envelope across the coffee table. Inside were copies of the same documents, and a notice giving them 30 days to vacate the property. His hands trembled as he opened it. "You planned this?" he whispered. "For 3 months." My daughter-in-law looked furious. "This is unbelievable." "No," I said gently. "What's unbelievable is thinking your mother could survive on $100 in her own home and never notice what you were doing." No one spoke. Finally, my son sat back down slowly. "You're really doing this?" I nodded. "Yes." Then I added one final thing. "But don't worry." They both looked up. "I left something for you." "What?" my son asked. I reached into my sweater pocket and placed a crisp bill on the coffee table. A single $100 bill. "Here," I said softly. "This should be enough for the month." The bill sat on the table between us. My son stared at it for a long time. For the first time in months, he looked exactly like the little boy I used to raise. Confused, ashamed. "Mom," he said quietly, but I stood up before he could finish. Because some lessons don't need another argument, they just need silence. I walked slowly toward the hallway where the old family photo still hung on the wall. There was one of Thomas and me from 30 years ago, standing in front of this very house while it was still half built. We were both covered in dust and smiling like fools. He used to say something back then. "A house isn't wood and bricks, Maggie, it's respect." I finally understood what he meant. Behind me, my son and his wife were still sitting on the couch, staring at that single $100 bill. For the first time since my husband died, the house felt quiet again. Not empty, just peaceful. And as I turned off the living room light that night, one thought crossed my mind. Sometimes the hardest lesson a child needs to learn is that a mother's kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. And if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven them or done exactly what I did? Tell me in the comments. And if stories about family, betrayal, and justice interest you, don't forget to subscribe because the next story might be even more shocking.